Prisoners in the UK applied to get married, but a new law could ban inmates serving whole life sentences from getting wed behind bars.
Well, Teresa Roberts married two prisoners who were both locked up for murder and says that relationships with men who aren't in jail are tiresome.
In just a moment, we'll hear from criminologist David Wilson. But first, let's speak to Teresa, who's joining us this morning, live from Seattle. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us, Teresa. I want to know, where did this all begin?
Well, my brother was in prison, and I used to go visit him in prison. And while I was there, I saw someone that was attractive, and I just made a off the cuff comment that he was attractive. And I got a letter in the mail asking if I wanted to be his pen pal, and soon thereafter we kind of fell in love.
That sort of didn't last so much. You were together on the outside, but then he unfortunately went back to his issue with drugs and was back in. You went back to dating non-prisoners, which you said was boring. One date, you said a guy was just out on his on his phone playing video games.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when I started dating people on the outside, it was either they were distracted or they expected something after the date, and it was just very frustrating. So I just went back to writing pen pals.
So how does that work? So obviously that you had met your ex-partner, particularly when you were visiting your brother. Then you go back to the outside dating. How does that work? How do you then gain a pen pal, you know, from an inmate? How does that then happen? Do you seek that?
Yeah, so there's a couple websites like Friends Beyond the Wall or writeaprisoner.com or whatever. There's a few websites that are that cater to that, if you will, and you can go on there and basically it's like a dating site in a way. You pick their age, pick the ethnicity or whatever you're looking for.
So what were you? You have three things. What were you looking for?
So after I was just tired and exhausted from trying to date people on the outside, I wanted to find somebody that was far away so I wouldn't be tempted to visit him, and somebody who was locked up for a long time so he wouldn't get out and break my heart like the last person did, and someone who wasn't terribly hideous, but also not great looking so I wouldn't fall in love with him. So I was trying to protect myself and not fall in love with the person.
I get that, because there was Xander in 2006, there was Chuck in 2013, there was Nick in 2016. A pen pal is one thing. Why on earth would you marry them? What's the point in marrying them when you've got all of your three things? You could just write to them and visit and be friends, because you can't, I'm assuming, be intimate because you're not going to be left alone.
Correct. So I think with Xander, I think the thing is we could get married. When someone's in prison, they can't do so many things, but we could get married. So when you can do something, you do it. And there is an attraction for someone in prison to be married. It makes them feel loved. It makes them feel wanted. So, you know, it means a lot to them, I think.
You know, you were talking about your list of criteria, and one of them is that, you know, you'd want them to be locked away for a very long time. Does that not sort of, does the red flag not happen where you think if they're locked away for a very long time, the crime that they're committed must be particularly bad, and in essence, does that make them the person that you would want to spend your life with and, you know, be committed to?
Well, I think there's a lot of factors involved. Like, for example, with Xander, he was convicted of murder, but he was an accomplice after the fact. He did not, in fact, commit the murder. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I did my due diligence and looked at all the microfilm and all the police records, and so I learned about his story. So, you know, he's really, honestly, a wouldn't hurt a fly kind of person. He just was young and with the wrong crowd and happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Is there something what do you get out of it for your life, from your past? I mean, you write in your book, I think, about the relationship with your brother. Is it something that you are looking for? Is it something that you think was seeded in your childhood?
I don't think so. But I mean, I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I'm pretty independent, so I don't need that constant, person around me or companionship like that. So I think for me it was, but also when you have a relationship with an inmate, you have that dedicated attention to each other that you don't get out here. I mean, so when you go to visit them in prison, there's no distractions. There's no, you're not talking to them while you're doing the dishes or cooking. You're talking to them and you're looking at them and you're holding your hand and you're sitting for 6 hours looking at them. And it's an amazing, dedicated conversation.
Did you fall deeply in love enough for if they were actually to be released that you think we can be together, or would you run a mile?
Well, Xander was released. I actually helped him get to the pardons board and got him released 7 years early, and we spent a year together outside, so he did get released. He's doing well, and he lives in Florida with his girlfriend, and he's doing very well, and has a successful business.
And
actually...
Pardon me, sorry, carry on.
Oh, I was just going to say, actually, every single person I've been with is now free and out.
And how do your friends and family feel about this? Because I would wonder, when you get married, you have this idea of the people that you're going to have there, and, some people dream of it, some people don't. But weddings look, can sometimes look a particular way. How do your friends and family feel about it?
I mean, they think I'm nuts, of course. But they've also met, I mean, they met Xander. I mean, I was married for 14 years to my first husband, and he was a normal person. But, I mean, not in prison. It was only my second, third, and fourth husbands that were in prison. But they also know the frustration of dating outside. I mean, there's lots of statistics and facts. I mean, half the murders are not solved. So the irony is you're safer to date someone in prison, because out here, you never know what could happen. But in there, it's a safe environment. It's.
Well, Teresa, thank you. I mean, she has said to us that she's not into bad boys. I mean, that's what she's not looking for. So from your point of view, David, it has a name. There is a name for this.
Yes, this is called hybristophilia. It's a term that was coined in the 1950s, so we can date Teresa's story back in history to the 1950s. And even before that, this is more commonly called the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. Oh, wow. So you've got that Bonnie Parker, Clyde Barrow, 2 American bank robbers who work together and are eventually going to be shot by the police. So this is a phenomenon that we can trace back in history, and it's also one that's becoming common, not just women writing to men, but men writing to violent women in prison, and same-sex couples forming as a result of this hybristophilia. And you were quite... I've read Teresa's book, and I enjoyed Teresa's book. Most of the research would say that often the people who are hybristophiliacs have had traumatic childhoods in which they don't feel that they get the love that they want, the attention they want. They don't have any control over how their parents or carers are going to look after them. And therefore, what better way as an adult to establish some control over your life than to form a relationship with somebody who's behind bars. You know where he is. You choose when you're going to write to him. He can't take all your money away. You'll choose how much money you're going to send to him. Teresa was referring to some of those instrumental reasons herself. She chose people who were quite far away so that it would be difficult to visit them. So there are a number of instrumental reasons why these hybristophiliac relationships get established, but then there are some of the more difficult, expressive reasons, some of the more psychological and darker reasons.
Just finally, Dominic Robbs, Justice Secretary, has recently proposed changes to the judicial system, including preventing prisoners serving a whole life sentence from getting married. He suggests this is in order to protect vulnerable people who may be manipulated by criminals.
I totally accept that. And remember, it's not he's banning everybody behind bars getting married. These are whole life tariff prisoners. And one of the things, if people genuinely want to write to people behind bars and get support in doing so, there's a wonderful registered charity called New Bridge. They could just simply do this via New Bridge, where they would get support in terms of some of the issues that would crop up, how to keep the relationship real. Because, of course, it is true that you're going to be much better able to reintegrate into society if you've got solid relationships in the community.
And Teresa, just finally on that note, what do you think of our Justice Secretary, Dominic Robbs, saying that that he would prevent marriage between whole life prisoners and those on the outside?
Well, from what I understand, the reasoning being because he wants to save women from being manipulated. I mean, that to me, that's ridiculous. Women and men, both, are manipulated by people outside of prison. I mean, it doesn't take somebody doing life in prison to manipulate somebody. We get manipulated every single day out here.
Thank you.
Fair.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you very much.